Good evening and welcome to Eat Smoke Drink. I am Eat Smoke Drink and today I am reviewing the Elements of Islay Ma2, which is our second release of MA. I want to tell you a little bit about Elements of Islay. They're independent bottlers and they, as you can probably have guessed, they are specialized in Islay whiskey. They actually are quite cool. They're quite cool because their bottles, which I will show you a picture of, they look like little lab chemistry sets. They've got the Ma2, which looks like the periodic table, and so all of the Islay distilleries that they bottle, they use symbols that look like the elements, the periodic table elements and things like that. So it's quite cool. This particular one is 4 bourbon barrels that's been vatted together, and it is 13 years old. But when you buy the bottle, it does not tell you the age statement. So I guess what they're trying to do is trying to get you to trust them and say, what we get as single malt expressions for you will be good. You don't need to know the age of it, because age is not always a determining factor of how good a whiskey is. And I like that because these come in 500ml bottles and they're usually pretty good. They're usually pretty good, and the bad ones that I've had are not actually bad. They're just not as good as the others. So I guess if you have the benchmark up here and then they release something a little bit, it's okay, then it's not. Yeah, you know, it's a bit hard to kind of call it exceptional when everything else is exceptional. This particular one is Bunnahabhain. The MA symbol is the Bunnahabhain. Bunnahabhain is an Islay whiskey. Generally you get a lot of coastal sherry influence. This one does not have that. This is bourbon. So Bunnahabhain mostly produces non-peated whiskey. So it's quite rare for an Islay whiskey to produce non-peated whiskey. Salinity is usually what you get. Sweetness, sherried influence is what you get as well. This one though, however, and I didn't know this until I nosed it quickly, is definitely peated. So let's get going. 3 drops, and let's start nosing the 2 samples. Definitely peated. But not a heavy peat. I'm getting the slight salinity in there. I'm getting fruit, pineapple, coconut, a little bit of vanilla. I'm definitely getting the bourbon influence. I mean, that's quite clear. I mean, right, if you close your eyes, you can probably even say that you're smelling a little bit of bourbon in there. That's very clear. A heavy coconut and heavy vanilla is usually indicative of a heavy bourbon barrel influence. But I'm also getting a little bit of bandage glue, a bit of burning wood, burning dry leaves, but just on the nose of the water sample. Very interesting. So I'm getting a lot more organic material and minerality with the water sample. The sweetness comes through a little bit more, but it's a little bit strange, but I'm getting a little bit of a stainless steel smell. You know when you touch stainless steel and you smell your hand, you got that little bit of stainless steel galvanized metallic smell. The peat is faint. A little bit of passion fruit comes out, a little bit of white pepper, but not much smoke. So yeah, distinct differences with the 2. Let's go back to it. A little earthiness is coming through now that I've sold a little bit more. A little bit of earthiness comes through as well. Very pleasant nose all out. Very nice, sweet, quite sweet. Quite sharp as well, a little bit sharp, but not too sharp that it becomes unpleasant. There's definitely a sharpness there. Quite a heavy whiskey, quite oily. I would put that down to the peat. oily. I get a little bit of salinity in there. I get organic matter. I get, like, you know, when you're in a playground, you kick up the bark on the ground. I get some of that as well. There's a slight damp smell of organic leather, but not much. I'm getting a taste of smoke, like a campfire smoke. The taste of the campfire smoke is actually more pronounced in the nose, so it's quite interesting because the nose, you don't get too much, but the taste, definitely get that smoke and peat in the taste. Ooh. Quite savoury. I'm not getting too much fruit in there, a little bit of sweetness, but very savoury as a general tone. I'd say I'd get very overripe pineapple. I'll get a bit of rubber, fresh rubber, like a new rubber, like when you just get something, a new shoe. But not too much, just a hint. And a slight woody taste as well. Let's try the water. All right. With the water, the alcohol burn subsides a lot. 13 years, probably not enough barrel contact in there to really hide that new spirit. You can kind of taste it with the no water sample, but with the water, that subsides a little bit, and it does give you a more pronounced, you know, smoldering rubber, wood. The salinity comes out a little bit more as well. I'm actually salivating now from the salinity. The interesting thing about this dram is that it builds on itself. It builds on itself. With every sip I've had, it builds on itself. It progresses in flavor. It's really complex, full of character, chewy as hell, oily, super oily. I like it. I really like it. A very pine cone, pine resin comes out with the water sample. In fact, with the water sample, it's almost like the whiskey has changed. It's become more complex, you know. And I'm back and forth with water or no water. I judge it on the individual dram, but in this particular dram, I would say water. My vote. Put a little bit of water in there, just a few drops. It opens it up beautifully. I get a little bit more fruit. I get a little bit of spice. The smoke comes out more. It's a bit better balanced. And funny enough, it tastes more oily. It just tastes stronger in flavor, but less of that alcohol burn. Which, you know, it's relatively common for a 13-year-old whiskey to have that alcohol burn or that new make spirit right in the back end. But the finish is glorious for both. The finish is fantastic. The finish is just everlasting. I mean, it's coated my mouth. For a Bunnahabhain peated, it is very, very oily. Usually they're not as peated or as oily as an Ardbeg or a Laphroaig, but in this case, this is definitely quite a heavily peated dram. But not to the point where it's going to hit your face. So if you're scared, oh, I might not like it, it's actually a really good dram for you to have as a peated whiskey. Now the cigar pairing I would recommend with this, it's quite a strong whiskey. It's quite a strong whiskey. It's 55%. I would say I would go for a dark Maduro, double Maduro, something quite peppery. A natural Dominican cigar would go well with this. I'd say a Cuban, you'd have to go for quite a strong Cuban with this one. Otherwise, you might just be smoking for the sake of it. You won't get the fine flavors of the Cuban. I'd say something robust, Dominican, Nicaraguan Maduro would suit this very well, or a double Maduro. I would like to have this dram again with an undercrown, actually, a Drew Estate undercrown, or one of the Liga Provida range. That would be spectacular. But in saying that, an añejo or a natural Arturo Fuente would also be very good. Padron, I think, unless you go for the really, really robust Padron, I think Padron might drown a little bit. It's a little bit too light, not oily enough to withstand the oiliness of this whiskey. Would I buy it again, this whiskey? Would I buy it, shall I say? Yes, I would. The cost of it is probably around about 100 to 130 US dollars if you can find it. So just search Elements of Islay and see who sells to you. You'll probably have to order it online. But fantastic dram. I would definitely buy it again, and I definitely recommend it. Thank you for joining me today. Please hit subscribe and ring that bell. If you have tried it before or have any questions about any of the Elements of Islay, please ask me. More than happy to answer them, and give me a thumbs up. And I just want to say thank you, Sunny from Hillcrest Bottle O in Hamilton here in New Zealand, for giving me the sample. Sponsored by Sunny.